The aroma of mole poblano mixed with the sound of laughter as the Reyes family gathered around the dining table in their Arlington, Virginia home. Outside, the October leaves painted the neighborhood in shades of amber and rust, but inside, the warmth came from more than just the kitchen. "Pass the tortillas," Marco said, his firefighter's badge still clipped to his belt from his shift. At 32, he commanded attention without trying. Broad shoulders, easy smile, the kind of presence that filled a room. The wall behind him displayed his commendations: Firefighter of the Year, Valor Award, Life-Saving Medal. Julia reached across the table, her movements precise, economical. At 28, she was everything her brother wasn't: quiet where he was loud, analytical where he was impulsive. Her laptop bag sat by the door, ready for another boring day at the office, as Marco liked to call it. "So, Jules," Marco grinned, that familiar teasing glint in his eye. "Save any spreadsheets from certain death this week?" The table erupted in familiar laughter. Their cousins chuckled. Uncle Roberto slapped his knee. Even their mother, Elena, couldn't suppress a smile as she brought out the flan. "Marco, dehala," their father, Carlos, said weakly, though his own lips twitched with amusement. "I'm just saying, Hermana, while I'm out there pulling people from burning buildings, you're, what, updating firewalls?" Marco spread his hands theatrically. "Tell me, Commander of the Keyboards, when was the last time Excel saved a life?" Julia's fingers tightened imperceptibly around her fork. In her mind, she saw the ransomware attack she'd stopped 3 days ago, one that would have crippled 2 major hospitals. She thought of the human trafficking ring they'd dismantled last month by tracing cryptocurrency transactions. The terrorist cell whose communications her team had intercepted just last week. "You're right, Marco," she said quietly, cutting into her enchilada. "Nothing exciting ever happens in IT." 4 hours later, Julia stood in a windowless room 20 feet underground. The soft blue glow of multiple screens illuminated faces focused in absolute concentration. This wasn't any IT department. This was the Cyber Operations Center of the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. "Commander Reyes," Lieutenant Chen approached with a tablet. "We've isolated the malware signature from the Chicago incident." Julia's eyes scanned the code, her mind already mapping attack vectors. Around her, 12 of the nation's best cyber warriors awaited her orders. They called her commander not out of courtesy, but because she'd earned it. Youngest unit leader in the agency's history, recruited straight from MIT after she'd accidentally uncovered a foreign intelligence operation while working on her thesis. "Deploy countermeasures to all critical infrastructure in the Midwest grid," she ordered, "and get me a secure line to Fort Meade. If this is who I think it is, we have 6 hours before they pivot to the financial sector." "Yes, ma'am." As her team scattered to their stations, Julia allowed herself a moment to lean against the wall. Her phone buzzed. A photo from tonight's dinner. Marco had his arm around their mother, his smile bright and confident, the hero everyone could see. She pocketed the phone and returned to her screens. Some wars were fought in daylight, with sirens and flashing lights. Others were fought in darkness, in silence, with keystrokes and algorithms. And Julia Reyes was very, very good at her job. Chapter 2. The Weight of Secrets. The November rain drummed against Julia's apartment windows in Crystal City as she reviewed classified reports. Her secure phone, the one her family had never seen, buzzed with updates from her team. They'd been tracking unusual network activity for weeks, patterns that suggested something big was coming. Her regular phone lit up with messages from the family group chat, photos of Marco at a charity event, holding a Dalmatian puppy while surrounded by adoring kids. "Your brother is such a hero," Aunt Maria had written. "When are you going to give us something to brag about, Julia?" She closed her eyes, exhaustion weighing on her shoulders. 3 months ago, she'd wanted to tell them, had even practiced the words. But then she'd signed another NDA, accepted another level of clearance, and the wall between her 2 lives grew higher. The doorbell interrupted her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw David Torres, one of her senior analysts, rain-soaked and urgent. "We need you at the center. Now." The operations room hummed with controlled chaos when they arrived. Every screen showed different data streams: satellite feeds, network traffic, intercepted communications. "What do we have?" Julia shed her wet jacket, immediately in command mode. "Remember the Chicago malware?" Captain Williams pulled up a global map, red dots spreading like a virus. It was a test run. "They're launching tonight, coordinated attacks on power grids in 12 major cities." Julia's mind raced. "Timeline? 2 hours, maybe less. Alert the Pentagon. Wake up, everyone. I don't care what time zone they're in." She moved to the center console, her team falling into formation around her. "Chen, I want eyes on every vulnerable node. Williams, coordinate with FBI Cyber Division. Torres, get me real-time feeds from all affected cities. Ma'am, Chen looked up from his station. One of the target cities. It's Arlington. Julia's blood chilled. Her family. Marco would be on shift tonight. Personal feelings aside, Lieutenant, she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. We have a job to do. For the next 90 minutes, Julia orchestrated a digital ballet of defense and counterattack. Her team moved like extensions of her will, each keystroke a parry, each command a thrust. They rerouted attacks, laid false trails, turned the attackers' own tools against them. Grid 7 secure. Los Angeles clear. Chicago defended. One by one, the red dots turned green. When the last city, Arlington, showed secure, a cheer went up from her team. Julia slumped in her chair, adrenaline giving way to exhaustion. Outstanding work, everyone, she managed. Reports on my desk by Oro 800. Now go home and get some sleep. As the room emptied, she stared at the Arlington feed. Somewhere in that city, Marco was probably responding to routine calls, unaware that his sister had just prevented a catastrophe that would have left him and thousands of first responders working in darkness. Her regular phone buzzed. A text from Marco. Slow night at the station. Probably not as boring as your evening staring at screens, though. Julia typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, "You'd be surprised." 3 days later, at Sunday dinner, the talk was all about the cyber terrorist attempt that had made headlines. Can you believe it? Marco gestured with his fork. They say some government tech team stopped it. Probably a bunch of nerds in a basement somewhere. Heroes come in all forms, mijo, their mother said gently. Sure, but come on, Marco laughed. It's not like typing on a keyboard compares to running into a burning building. Right, Jules? You'd probably know. Don't you work with computers? Julia smiled, the same practiced smile she'd perfected over years. I guess heroes are wherever you find them. Spoken like a true desk jockey. Marco ruffled her hair as he passed. Don't worry, Hermanita. We can't all be frontline heroes. Someone has to file the reports. Across the table, their father watched Julia with curious eyes. Carlos Reyes had been a detective for 30 years. He knew how to read people. And lately, something about his daughter's silence spoke louder than words. Chapter 3, The Birthday Revelation. The December air was crisp and bright. Perfect weather for Carlos Reyes's 65th birthday celebration. The backyard had been transformed with string lights and papel picado, tables groaning under the weight of Elena's cooking. Extended family filled every corner, their voices a symphony of English and Spanish, laughter and stories. Julia stood by the kitchen window, watching Marco hold court near the fire pit. He was recounting a rescue from last week, a family trapped in a car accident, how he'd used the jaws of life to free them. Their teenage cousin Luis hung on every word, eyes shining with hero worship. Not joining the party, mija? Her mother appeared beside her, drying her hands on a dish towel. Just taking a breather, Mom. Elena studied her daughter's face. You've been tired lately. Working too much? If only she knew. Julia's team had been running operations for 72 hours straight, shutting down a cryptocurrency scheme funding arms dealers. She'd caught 3 hours of sleep in her office before driving here. Julia! Marco's voice boomed across the yard. Come here. Luis wants to know about your exciting IT adventures. She walked over, already knowing where this was going. Tell him about your biggest save this year. Marco grinned, beer in hand. Did you recover someone's deleted files? Restore a crashed hard drive? Something like that, Julia said quietly. See, Luis? Marco threw an arm around the teenager's shoulders. Not everyone can be a first responder. Julia here commands an army of spreadsheets. We call her the commander of Ctrl plus Alt plus Delete. The group laughed. Julia noticed her father watching from his chair, that detective's gaze sharp despite the birthday festivities. Actually, Luis said, I think cybersecurity sounds cool. My computer science teacher says, trust me, kid, Marco interrupted. You want real action? Real purpose? Join the fire department. Leave the boring stuff to people like... The sound of engines cut through his words. Not fire trucks, something more serious. 3 black SUVs with government plates pulled up to the curb. Doors opened in synchronization, and men and women in tactical gear emerged. The party fell silent. Someone dropped a beer bottle. Lieutenant Chen stepped forward, his dress uniform immaculate. Behind him, Julia's entire unit stood at attention. They'd come straight from the operation, still wearing their tactical vests, sidearms visible. Chen's voice carried across the stunned yard. Commander Reyes, sorry to interrupt. The Pentagon needs you for the debrief. The operation was a complete success, ma'am. All targets neutralized. Julia closed her eyes for a heartbeat. When she opened them, She saw Marco's face, confusion morphing into shock. I need 10 minutes, she said. Of course, Commander. Chen saluted. A real salute, crisp and respectful. The Secretary of Defense extends his personal congratulations. The threat assessment you provided was instrumental in preventing significant loss of life. Captain Williams stepped forward. Ma'am, should we brief you on the Geneva follow-up while we wait? Negative, Captain. Secure channels only. Julia's voice had changed. Authoritative, decisive. The voice of someone used to being obeyed. Maintain perimeter security. I'll be with you shortly. Yes, ma'am. The team dispersed to strategic positions around the yard, their movements professional, alert. One took position by the gate. Another had a clear view of the street. Even at a birthday party, they protected their commander. The silence stretched until Elena whispered, Julia, what is this? I'm sorry, Mom. I have to go. Julia looked at her family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all frozen in disbelief. Then her eyes found Marco. Her brother stood rigid, beer forgotten in his hand. The IT department, he said weakly. Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Cyber Operations Division. She straightened her shoulders. I lead a unit that prevents digital attacks on national infrastructure. We stop threats before they become the emergencies you respond to. How long? Her father's voice was steady, unsurprised. The detective had suspected. 6 years. The hospital ransomware attack. Marco's voice was hollow. The terrorist cell in Baltimore. The trafficking ring. That was you? My team. Yes. Uncle Roberto found his voice. But why didn't you tell us? Because I couldn't. Because security clearance isn't just paperwork. It's lives at stake. Because every operation we run could be compromised by a single overheard conversation. She looked at Marco. Because I got tired of defending a job I couldn't explain. Chen appeared at her elbow. Commander, I apologize, but we really do need to go. The Joint Chiefs are waiting. Julia nodded. She kissed her mother's cheek, squeezed her father's shoulder. Then she walked through her stunned family, her team falling into formation around her. At the gate, she turned back. Marco hadn't moved, still processing. Their eyes met across the yard, the hero everyone could see and the one who'd been invisible. Tell Luis, she said, loud enough for all to hear, that sometimes the most important battles are the ones fought in silence. Then Commander Julia Reyes left her father's birthday party, her unit flanking her to brief the Secretary of Defense on the cyber war she'd just won. Behind her, the Reyes family stood in a tableau of shock, finally understanding that their quiet Julia, the one they'd dismissed, teased, underestimated, had been a warrior all along. Chapter 4. After the Silence. The knock came at 6 a.m., 3 days after the birthday revelation. Julia opened her apartment door to find Marco standing in the hallway, still in his station uniform from a night shift. He held 2 cups of coffee, his face a mixture of emotions she'd never seen before. Can I come in? She stepped aside. Marco entered, taking in the space he'd rarely visited. His eyes caught on things he'd never noticed. The high-end security system, the locked door to what he'd assumed was a home office, the multiple computer monitors visible through a cracked door. I couldn't sleep, he said, handing her a coffee. Haven't been able to since you found out your sister isn't who you thought she was? That's just it. Marco slumped onto her couch. I keep thinking about all the times I mocked you, all the jokes, the comments about your boring job. He looked up at her, eyes haunted. Julia, I'm so sorry. She sat beside him, choosing her words carefully. You didn't know. But I should have seen something. Dad did. He told me after you left that he'd suspected for years. Said you had the same look he used to get during undercover operations. Marco laughed bitterly. A detective's daughter and a firefighter's sister, and we both missed it. I'm very good at my job, Marco. And part of my job was making sure no one knew. The Geneva follow-up that Captain mentioned. What was that? Julia hesitated. Then decided her brother deserved some truth. International cyber terrorism ring. They were planning coordinated attacks on financial systems. We tracked them for 8 months, infiltrated their networks. The takedown happened the morning of Dad's party. 8 months. Marco set down his coffee with shaking hands. While I was making jokes about spreadsheets, you were doing my job, just like you do yours. It's not the same. He stood abruptly, pacing. I put out fires, Julia. You prevent wars. You save thousands of people before they even know they're in danger. And his voice cracked. I made you feel small. Made everyone laugh at you. Julia rose, intercepting his agitated path. Marco, listen to me. You run into burning buildings. You pull people from car wrecks. You see their faces, hold their hands, give them hope in their worst moments. That's not small. That's everything. But no. She gripped his shoulders. We both save lives. Yours are visible, dramatic, immediate. Mine are statistical, prevented, classified. Neither is more important. They're just different. Marco's eyes filled with tears. Something she hadn't seen since they were children. How do you forgive me? Because you're my brother. Because I chose this silence. Because, she smiled softly, because part of me enjoyed being underestimated. It made my job easier. They stood there in the early morning light, two siblings recalibrating years of misunderstanding. Can you tell me anything? Marco asked finally. About what you really do? Julia considered. Remember the blackout that didn't happen during the Super Bowl 2 years ago? There was no blackout. Exactly, she smiled. You're welcome. Marco laughed, really laughed, for the first time since the party. God, Julia. My little sister, the secret badass. Not so secret anymore. Yeah, about that. Marco rubbed his neck. The family group chat has been insane. Aunt Maria wrote a 5-paragraph apology. Luis changed his college major to computer science. And Mom has called 18 times. I know. Julia sighed. I'll deal with it. This was always going to come out eventually. I want to help, to make this right. Marco's face was earnest. What can I do? Julia considered. Just be my brother. No more commander jokes, but also, don't treat me differently. I'm still me. Deal. He paused. Although I already told the guys at the station. They think it's the coolest thing ever. Rodriguez wants to know if you're single. Marco? What? My sister's a certified genius superhero. I'm going to brag a little. 2 weeks later, the Reyes family gathered for Christmas dinner. The dynamic had shifted. Conversations included Julia now, questions about her work, what she could share, respect in their eyes. Luis peppered her with coding questions. Even Aunt Maria asked for cybersecurity advice. But the biggest change was in Marco. He still told his rescue stories, still commanded attention with his natural charisma, but now he made space for Julia too. When someone asked about her work, he'd say, ask her about the time she saved the entire eastern seaboard's power grid. Or, Julia can't tell us details, but trust me, we sleep safer because of her team. After dinner, the siblings found themselves on the back porch, watching their cousins' children play with new toys. You know what I realized? Marco said, breath visible in the cold air. We're both protectors, just wearing different uniforms. No uniform for me. Technically, keeps us under the radar. See, that's what I mean. I get medals and newspaper articles. You get, he gestured vaguely, secret handshakes from the Pentagon? Something like that, Julia smiled. Although there was this one time the president? Can't say which one. Can't say, or when, or why. Marco groaned. You're killing me. They laughed, and it felt like healing. Inside, their mother called for dessert, their father's voice joining hers. The house glowed with warmth and light, filled with family who now saw Julia clearly, not as the quiet sister in the shadow of a hero, but as a hero in her own right. Hey, Julia, Marco said as they headed inside. For what it's worth, I'm proud to be your brother. Always was, even when I was too stupid to show it. But especially now that I know my sister is basically a real-life superhero protecting the world. Julia bumped his shoulder. Save it for the next time you need tech support. Oh, I'm never living that down, am I? Never, she confirmed. That's what siblings are for. They entered the house together. The firefighter who saved lives in the light, and the commander who saved them in the shadows. Different uniforms, different battles, but finally, equal respect. And in the Reyes family, there was room for both kinds of heroes. Epilogue. 6 months later, the secure conference room in the Pentagon hummed with tension. Julia stood before a display showing cascading attack vectors across a global map. Senators, what you're seeing is a real-time visualization of attempted intrusions on critical infrastructure. Last month alone, my unit prevented 47 major incidents. Senator Williams leaned forward. And the American people have no idea. That's the point, sir. Panic serves no one. We handle threats quietly, efficiently. Commander Reyes, Senator Chen smiled slightly. I understand you recently broke operational security at a family gathering. Julia's lips twitched. And calculated decision, ma'am. My unit agreed the cover was no longer sustainable. And your family's reaction? Surprised, but ultimately, proud. After the briefing, Julia found a message from Marco. Saw the news about unnamed cyber defense units saving the banking system. I know it was you. Dinner Sunday? I'm buying. Your favorite brother. She typed back, only if you promise not to call me Commander Spreadsheet. No promises. But I'll throw in dessert. Deal. Julia smiled, pocketing her phone. Some heroes wore turnout gear and saved lives everyone could see. Others typed in the darkness and saved lives no one knew were threatened. Both mattered. Both served. And finally, both were seen.